So what exactly is enumeration? Enumeration is defined as the extraction of user names, machine names, network resources, shares, and or services. In other words, you want as much information as possible about what's running on their particular network. Some of the different techniques that you use could be intranet enumeration. You could also do enumeration involving active connections, such as we saw in our scanning, or you could do directed queries directly to the systems itself. The different type of information enumerated by intruders can be network resources or shares, users and their groups, applications and banners, and even auditing settings. So some of the different techniques: we can use Windows 2000, 2003 enumeration. We can also, believe it or not, extract usernames by using SNMP, and we may be able to extract them also by just using email ID. So first let's talk about what is a null session. A null session is sometimes called the holy grail of hacking, because if you can have a null session, then you can pretty much take advantage of the different systems and have any kind of access that you need on a system. Now it takes advantage of the CIFS, or the Common Internet File System, or the SMB server messaging block flaws. Basically, you sign on to a Windows machine, either NT, 2000, XP, or even sometimes 2003, by logging on with a null username and password. Now, using these null connections, you can get all kinds of information. You can get lists of users and groups, lists of machines, lists of shares, and you can get the users and the host SIDs, or security identifiers. Once you have this information, you have a lot that you can work with. So what is really the big deal? Well, anybody who has NetBIOS running, or anybody that's running NetBIOS, can easily get a dump of all of the information on your system. All of the names, the shares, the permissions, and more. And the syntax is basically pretty easy. What it takes advantage of is the inter-process communication, or the IPC share. What it is a hidden communication share, IPC $. Well, we all know that the $sign is supposed to hide it from view, but everybody knows you can use the $sign. So actually what you do is you type in a IP address, and you go ahead and use the anonymous user, which is just /u : and then double quote, and then you put the double quote for a null password. So in order to actually create it, you would type in net space use, and then space // whatever the IP address is, space /IPC $, and then double quote, space /u : double quote. Now I can actually create a connection right over your system going over TCP port 139, even though I didn't type in a username. That's why it's called a null session. So there are a lot of different tools that can take use of this. One of them is dumpsec. And what dumpsec does is basically reveal shares over the null session on the target computer. Once I know the shares, then I can start looking for other information. I can also do NetBIOS enumeration. Now, NBT Scan is a program that you can use. It scans IP networks and looks for NetBIOS name information. For each host that gives me IP information, I get the NetBIOS computer name, the logged in username, and the MAC address. That alone is a lot of information. So the first thing I'm usually going to try on a Windows 2000 or 2003 network is to get a list of all the different hosts that are attached, because then I can find the host machine that will allow me to attach this way. So I'll typically do a net view, and then I'll put in the domain I want. And then after I get those addresses back, or those names back, then I will go ahead and use NBT stat to actually take a look at that information. And you'd be surprised what you can pull back. Another tool is SuperScan 4. Now this is a very powerful TCP port scanner. It also does pinging, and it will resolve host names. Now it performs the ping scans and the port scans, doing any IP range, or I can even use a text file that specifies what addresses I want to look for. I can scan any port range from this built-in list or this specified range, and I can even resolve or do reverse lookups on IP addresses to a range. It also I can modify the port list or port descriptions by using a built-in editor, so I can really tweak and tune it to do whatever I want. What it will try to do then is connect to any discovered port using the user-defined helper applications like Telnet or a web browser or even FTP, and I can also use any other tool that I want as well. So if you take a look at the snapshot of SuperScan, you can see that it's a very powerful tool that can be used. Once I'm attached, then I can go ahead and do some Windows enumeration. In this case, I'm trying to find out the user's information from this particular network. Another tool I could use is called Enum. It's available for download. Anybody can have it. It's just a console-based Win32 application, and its sole purpose is to go ahead and enumerate a network. So what it does is use null sessions, and it retrieves all the user lists, the machine list, and so on. In other words, all the information I need to start trying to compromise those accounts. It's also capable of doing a very rudimentary brute force dictionary style of attack on individual accounts. Now, the other thing I can do with enumerated counts is actually figure out what is the security clearances. So one of the ways that I will do that is by either doing a SID to user or a user to SID. And I can get both of these programs freely over the internet. Now what they are is basically command line tools, but then what they let me do is they let me look up the NT SIDs for a particular user's name. Or if I know the user's name, then I can look up the SID that way. Now, the most common SID I'll look for is one that ends in -500. Because on a Windows 2000, 2003 system, the -500 indicates that this is an administrator account. So if I have the SID, I can get the username, or if I have the username, I can certainly get the SID. One of the easiest ways to do this is to use the Get Account tool. Now what this tool does is there's actually a fix on the system to restrict anonymous equal 1, and what that says basically is that you have to be authenticated. Well, this tool, Get Account, gets around that restriction, and I can download it off of the internet, and then I can go ahead and still make that null connection. Now, how do you countermeasure a null session? Well, the first thing you need to know is that null session requires NetBIOS. So if I'm going to have NetBIOS running on my system, I'm going to be a little bit susceptible to it. The easiest way to stop null sessions is to not use or to block TCP ports 139 and or TCP 445, since these are the ports that are used for NetBIOS. Now remember that a Windows null session does not work with 2003. You could also disable SMB services entirely on an individual host by unbinding the Win's TCP client from the interface. Or you could also edit the registry to restrict the anonymous user. And in this case, you just open up your Reg32, go to the H-key local machine, system, current control set, LSA, and then you go ahead and add a value for restrict anonymous.